Soul Knight is no stranger to questionable balance approach. From Moonshine basically giving you a nuke and swing, to the robot suddenly becoming hard meta after a single change in 5.3.0. But all these don't even compare to a character so insanely broken on a fundamental level that Chiller Room had to nerf it pretty much immediately. And yet they continue to make the normal mode a joke and move on to make one of Soul Knight's most honorable challenges a complete walk in the park. Enter the Airbender, one of the most controversial additions to the game. I'll be talking about the character, how it's conceptually overpowered in anything short of a Ward 3 in the badass stream, and how it broke Soul Knight in a way that no other character could ever dream. The Airbender is an office-type character, with a decent health of 5, high armor of 7, and relatively low energy of 108. His gimmick is having control over multiple enemies, which is shown quite well with his kit. You see, most characters have one passive. The Vampire sometimes gets help from defeating enemies, the Necromancer slows down enemy bullets and has a higher pickup radius, but that doesn't compare to our Air Cyclops here. The Airbender has 4 passives, all relating to his melee Kaigong energy nonsense. The first passive is that, as mentioned by his menus, is that his barehanded attacks come in a sequence of 3, with the third one releasing a Kaigong wave that deals damage and costs energy. This may seem like a downside, aka not having a melee that can reliably remove all incoming bullets in a half-circle pattern, but don't be fooled, the Airbender has a lot more tricks up his sleeves, starting with the fact that he can bend more than just aim. His second hidden passive is that he can manipulate buffs he accumulates into his melee attack. Gain a fire buff and now your Kaigong wave and melee strikes deal fire damage. Get an ice buff and they can also freeze enemies. This is both immobilizing enemies and also setting up after. Called the Airbender in America because he just broke the Geneva Convention. Twice. Not only that, but if you acquire a radial buff, the Airbender replaces the blast with 4 Kaigong waves of his own, increasing the damage and the range as well as applying his double war crown waves. Get the shotgun buff and you make those waves 8 instead of 4. You can also improve your first skill, which we'll be talking about later. So to recap, with just his passive, assuming he gets all the buffs needed, the Airbender has fire damage on top of freeze damage on top of sonic enemies on top of deleting projectiles with more damage and longer range, and dealing overall more damage with his melee attacks. Tarago's passive pierces enemies on crit. This is more utility than some starter characters without even mentioning his skill, which is his strongest asset, but we'll be talking about this skill later. Before we do have to talk about his starter weapon, the Qian-Kun Punch. While the elf brought a bow, the officer brought a gun, and the engineer brought all of French defenses in the 1800s, the Airbender decided to give the poor goblins of World 1 a taste of his knuckle sandwich. They count as regular barehanded attacks, meaning they apply all the BS we just talked about, in addition to having absurd teleportation range and stickiness. Add the combo buff and the 3-rounded melee attack now become a 4. And remember, they also fire a wave that can deflect bullets if you have the deflection buff. This may all seem pretty underwhelming for a starter weapon, especially compared to something like the vampires or the robots, but just like these two, it has a secret, and it isn't even required to upgrade in order to get that secret. Its secret is that you can keep it while having 2 other weapons. Yep, that's right, the Airbender always has access to a melee weapon, it doesn't matter what the other 2 are, meaning that the list of passives he already has, now we also need to throw in a 3rd weapon buff as his passive. This is more broken than you realize, because it means the Airbender never has to sacrifice any firepower to have a melee weapon for protection because he already has one. He can also instead lead with it due to its high base damage. It's worth noting that technically speaking, this and his barehanded attacks are also not at all any different. If you throw it, you want to have access to your 3rd free melee, but you'll still apply all the above by getting close to enemies. Oh, and the Airbender also has the highest crit chance of all characters at 15, because why not? But the real power this character has, and the real nukes that dropped in this game and made a lot of it more or less a joke, is not his fist, it's in his skill. Why, you ask? Well, let's just say that the Airbender is the first character in the game to have an ultimate ability in addition to his regular skill. For the sake of clarity, and also because I think orbiting stars is a horrible waste of money for anything short of a Devil's Air fight, I will be primarily talking about his first skill, Pulsating Blow. The Airbender charges up and dashes, dealing damage to the first target hit and releasing a huge Kaigong wave. Additionally, a Kai Ball will be released at the end of the dash to deal more damage. While the distance isn't affected by the charge time, the damage and the wave's range is, and the cooldown as well. The Kai Ball deals AoE damage and gets its size increased when the dash is fully charged. It fires 3 Kai Balls when the skill is fully upgraded. It's worth noting that when you tap the skill, you dash the full distance and the cooldown becomes negligible, meaning that you can use it for mobility, although Soul Knight's auto-aim will definitely mess with you in that if you try to use it for combat. However, you already know there is more. There's a reason why I'm making this video, as well thanks to a secret attack with this skill. If you punch with your bare hands or your Qian-Kun Punch, then tap the skill, then punch 6 times, aka proc your passive twice, then fully charge, well, this happens. The The beam attack, or as I like to call it,
Deadly Laser,
causes the Airbender to root himself and fire a huge beam of Qian-Kun, completely obliterating any enemy in range with constant damage. A single use of this laser plays out waves like it's nothing and deals pretty heavy damage to bosses. The Airbender also auto-locks into targets, meaning you can just charge the laser outside of the room, get in the middle, and fire away without doing anything else. You'll most likely finish the room even when the other monsters spawn. Oh, but he stands still to cast it. Doesn't that mean he'll be vulnerable to attack? He has a Kai aura around him that acts like a melee shield, blocking all incoming bullets while casting. He becomes vulnerable, clears out everything in sight, and deals heavy damage to special units and bosses. The beam also lasts just long enough to clear out multiple waves. Basically, if the other damage-based skills were like soldiers, the Airbender's Deadly Laser is the goddamn Doom Guard. Saying that the Airbender broke normal mode is an understatement. With a Deadly Laser and his incredibly quick and powerful melee, he clears out World 1 and World 2 like it's nothing. And his defensive aspects of his passive and the Deadly Laser ensures his survivability in World 3. He's also allowed to get greedy and fully upgrade to weapons instead of having to keep one slot for melee purposes, since he has a third one on the get-go, making him the most gold-efficient character in the game. He can also go the opposite route and fill out his weapon slots with things like Paladin Shield and Nirvana, and simply rely on his Deadly Laser for damage because God knows it clears out better than any goddamn King's Blast. Why is that a problem, you ask? Well, it is because all of those utility options, all of those passives, skills, run clears, boss rushes, defensive, offensive, and general fuck up the enemy monsters can be obtained by just an achievement. Unlike other characters, you can unlock the Airbender through Origin. You know, the mode you played once in your life, died in Wave 3, and then never touched again? Yeah, it houses an achievement to get the most broken character to be ever introduced in Soul Knight. Sure, you have to reach 3-5 first in order to get Origin mode unlocked in the first place, and then you have to go and fight the possessed Airbender first in said Origin mode. But because of how telegraphed these abilities are, it only takes a couple of tries, or an alchemist, to finish him off. The Vampire, Paladin, Berserker, etc. are all powerful meta characters, but they all cost real-life money. And some of the gem-based characters require hundreds of games in order to grind. Meanwhile, if you're good enough at the game, you can just beat it once, go to Origin, beat the Airbender, and obtain one of the strongest characters in the whole game for free. You don't even need to upgrade him. Deadly Laser is fully upgraded from the get-go. Upgrading only benefits the dash skill and unlocks his passive. So you can quite literally spend nothing and already breeze through levels like it's crazy. He doesn't even have bad at badass either, provided you get the right setup and buffs. Compare this to the opposite, one of if not the weakest Soul Knight character. Oh, I'll get to you in another video. You have to first unlock his board by reaching to 3, then finish 10 tasks in order to get him. That is so much effort just for a weak version of the elf, while the Airbender is over here challenging the Paladin, Rogue, and Vampire over the crown and can fuck up the Goblin-based hardest. Despite this, he's not totally unstoppable. A brave Soul Knight dev let go of the vodka for a bit and then remembered that they have to keep the character somewhat confined and balanced. As such, they made the beam get stopped by walls, which you will experience and dread a lot. Meaning that some rooms are terrible for the Airbender while others can feel like being gifted candy for just waking up on a Saturday morning. However, the most damaging thing the Airbender existence did to Soul Knight is not his dominance in normal mode, not his flexibility and broad, room clear, and high damage. It is how he killed off the legendary Strong Fist challenge. A challenge that only the most courageous of Soul Knight players dare to attempt, and also the most patient. The Strong Fist challenge requires you to beat a badass run without weapons, only your bare-handed attacks and whatever mounts, pets, and buffs you may encounter along the way. Completing badass was already a challenge, but a badass run without weapons, now that took skill to do. Even your starter weapon counts, you have to throw it away in the trash before even starting the run. Normal players use the Paladin or Vampire for it, utilizing their defensive abilities to stay alive long enough for their melee attacks to finish the enemies off. Cowards used the Engineer and stayed in a corner spamming their melee while their turret did all the work. Bad addicts used the Rogue and spammed their skill button so many times their finger looks like a table leg now, just to beat to 1. And Masochists used the Officer to have a gun in the gunless challenge and then died at 1-3 again. But the Airbender came in and made this difficult challenge something any Joe Schmo can do with basic Soul Knight knowledge, with just a couple of tries. Considering that you keep your starter weapon even when you throw it, because once again, bare hands is technically the Airbender's starter, means that you're still using the regular Airbender. Mix that with a couple of buffs and the Deadly Laser, and you get a bare-handed character that's freezing and burning enemies while reflecting their abilities and bullets, and dealing so much damage in a huge aerial effect that the Berserker mains have to find a new job, while also being invulnerable while channeling it, and having mobility in the form of tapping the skill. Sure, it takes some time to get used to when you should laser and when you should hold off, but that's why I didn't say first time. It was so much that even I, your average lose track of where I am during Bullet Hell Enjoyer, managed to do it in just 3 tries. It's crazy, completely broke the challenge. In an ironic turn of events, the Airbender ends up being the only character that doesn't receive the cool gold glow of barehanded attacks when getting the achievement due to the passive's nature, which makes it really unfair to people who actually like the Airbender and main him. because while they practiced him and beat the challenge with their favorite character and then got bumped down because they can't use the golden fist, the other character's mains simply can just abuse the Airbender, get the achievement, and then never touch him again. But alas, it is the price of maining such a game-breaking, challenge-nullifying, Qian-Kun character after all. So in conclusion, what do I think of the Airbender? Well, he's busted, but I low-key love him. It's why he's on my ban. Sure, he may have broken the armor runs and made one of the most challenging runs unnecessarily easy, but as a wise man once said, if it pisses off Roguebanes, it's good in my book.
For legal reasons, that's a joke.
What do you think of the Airbender? Let me know in the comments. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. I have a lot more video essays planned for other characters, so if you'd like to see that, let me know. This took a while to make, so I'd appreciate if you subscribe and drop a like. Let's see if we can make this channel idea work for once. God knows I made a lot more. Alright, thanks for watching and see you next time.